Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here tonight. We already got some thumbs up and some hearts, so thank you. Right back at you. If you're watching this at a better time for you, i.e. not live, no worries. You will be able to ask your questions, and I will still help get our Better Nutrition experts answers for those. But for those of you joining us tonight, we'd love to know where you're from, what you're up to, what questions you've got. We are going to dive deep into not just the awesomeness of plants, but how to eat plants. Hello, Araceli, great to see you. And it's really a great natural, like, 1-2 punch after last night's CBD conversation. So really excited to go deeper into plants. And I'll just, before I keep babbling away, hello, Fabrizio. I am Ashley Koff. I'm a registered dietitian for about 20 years, and I am currently CEO of the Better Nutrition Program, where we develop tools for practitioners and patients to help you assess your total nutrition. Make sure we're getting in all those plants and all those benefits more often. And we have this Better Nutrition expert interview series because I reach out to all these experts to ask them questions so that I can help these tools be the best that they can be. And along the way, I realized there are these awesome people that are doing such great work. By definition, a Better Nutrition expert is somebody who is both science-based and practice-based. So what you're getting here is the power and the knowledge around science, but also the person that's applying it to those of us humans, because we're not all the same. So we got to make sure on that part. Okay, so welcome, Desiree, one of my absolute favorite dietitians from just across the border in Canada. This is going to be so much fun because, gosh, there are so many different ways and different questions and paths I could go down with you. But you have this new book about eating more plants. And I just want to start off right off the bat diving in and just ask you, what got you excited to create a book about eating more plants?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been a vegetarian for over 20 years. And if you had asked me if people would be this interested in plant-based eating today, I would be like, no way. Like, I was eating like mac and cheese and veggie dogs back then, and they still thought I was weird. So, right. I just see that there's this interest and this awareness that we need to eat more plant foods because obviously we're not doing well. We're not feeling well. We're eating tons of hyper-processed junk. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to show people, because as a dietitian in practice, I find that people think of healthy eating as penance or deprivation. And so I really wanted a book that was a celebration of plant foods. The recipes are all meant to be therapeutic and anti-inflammatory. They're vegan, they're gluten-free, but more than that, they are flavorful and they are fun to eat. And then they don't take 2 hours in the kitchen. I really want to show people that eating this way is awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I remember, I think it was the first time we met, or at least the first time IRL, like that we got to hang out. And we were at this super cool place in Toronto where it was like we must have ordered, we kept ordering. It was like more juices, more salads, more of like all these different concoctions. And, when you're with dietitians and you're meeting them, you're not necessarily sure if they're going to love food as much as you do. So when we talk about loving food, what for you, was it the loving the nutrition part that came first, or loving the taste of the flavorfulness and the taste of food that came first?
It was absolutely taste. I grew up in a Portuguese family where the dinner table and the kitchen were absolutely the center of family life. Like, if you walked into my grandmother's kitchen, she asked if you were hungry. You must be hungry because you just showed up. There was always more food, and spending my time between the garden and really learning to cook at her apron strings. And I never actually, and this is the most amazing thing about kids, I never thought about food as healthy or unhealthy. We ate salads and we ate vegetables and I ate ice cream and potato chips, and everything was neutral ground. And it wasn't really until I was a teenager, and you do as teenagers do, and you start thinking about food in different ways. But I became a vegetarian when I was like 16 or 17, and that sort of blew open this whole nutrition thing. The idea that you could make different choices about the food you eat for different reasons other than it just tastes good. And then I went really headlong into the science and maybe forgot about the food a little bit. And then it both came back around.
Yeah, I love that. And I just want to take a moment to say hi to Amy. I haven't seen you for a while, Amy, so it's great to have you pop in. And Jan, we're so excited that we're live with Desiree too. Thank you for joining us from Ontario. Totally love that part. And she loves that your recipes don't take 2 hours because she said she's slow in the kitchen. Look, I borrow from IKEA the phrase of some assembly required. Hi, Margaret. It's great to see you as well. So, I think let's not for a moment start off with like all the health benefits of plants. I think we're there. One of the things when I think about eating more plants that is challenging is you were just talking about food should taste really delicious to you. I do something called an apple test with a lot of my clients where I'll slice up an apple and not a green apple, a regular, like a red or a Fuji or whatever. And I have them taste it. And I ask them, we have a little bit of water and tell me like how it tastes and if it tastes sweet. And I can't tell you the number of times that people will say to me, and this has happened to myself, oh, by the way, this isn't like, those people, where the apple just doesn't taste so sweet. And it's not the apple's fault. It's because like maybe I've just been hitting the wine, the coffee, the chocolate, a couple of these things, maybe a little bit more. And my taste buds are a little bit out of balance. And so one of the things that I think is a challenge about eating more plants is actually, you were saying like you grew up, you love delicious food. We have all these tastes. For those of us that grew up in America, we maybe grew up with a lot of tastes that were designed in a lab to like make our taste buds just fire off. And it's actually really hard to find, in that transition with plants for them to taste delicious. Or our exposure, was maybe school zucchini or something like that, which was not what we want to be eating. So if we're starting to eat more plants and it maybe isn't something like, give me maybe 2 or 3 tips, and they can be tips from the book or even just, from things that you apply in your practice of how do you sort of start to sensitize your taste buds to loving how delicious plants can be.
Yeah, well, and it's something I talk a lot because it's rampant, right? So it's something I talk a lot about with my clients is that I don't want them to go cold turkey because I don't want their food to taste like dirt. I mean, that's essentially what it tastes like when you're hijacked by those hyper-processed foods. And so I typically get them to step down. So wherever those extra sugars or salt or hyper-processed foods, just to step it down. If all they eat is sweetened yogurt, I'm like, okay, so why don't you cut that 50-50 with plain yogurt? Wait till you don't notice that anymore and then bring it back down. When it comes to actually introducing the plant foods, though, I tell people not to be afraid of a little salt, a little extra fat, and a little extra sugar. I think it's more important to get the good stuff in than to, at this point, worry about, how many grams of sugar are there? Or is that a little bit too much salt? I personally want my salads to taste like potato chips. The level of salt that it takes for me to have that taste sensation and someone else might be different. But I think people really need to taste. And that was a big thing when I was learning to cook, is that I never tasted my food. And so now it's like, as you're cooking, taste it. Does it taste good to you? If there's bitterness, a little bit of maple syrup can help to moderate that. If it tastes a little bit flat, a little bit of lemon juice or a little bit of salt. And it's something in the cookbook that I do is I'm not afraid of any of those things. It's always about building flavor because you're getting these nutrient-dense plant foods. You got to zhuzh them up a little bit.
We love it. The zhuzhing of plants. That's gonna be the way that we go on that part. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Michelle. Lisa is like salt, sugar, fat, and the bliss factor. Exactly. Maria, wonderful to see you. And yeah, I think that you're right I know you're right on that part of, how do you zhuzh the food up and do those pieces. And there's so much, there's so many amazing plants, right? And the benefits of plants. And we're going to pause. We're not going to go into all of those benefits right now. I'm going to keep us on the food front because I really love this notion of eating more plants. How are we going to actually make it happen? So talk a little bit about how, there's a lot of, they're still eating for nutrients like protein or calcium or things like that. So if you're, just like with taste, if you're trying to go down that path, how can you, as you're trying to eat more plants, be okay or get help knowing that you're not going to miss out on something that you're swapping it for? So you were just talking about yogurt or, and everybody goes, oh, yogurt, my calcium, or maybe even yogurt, my probiotics. Like, how do I start to understand how to make that shift over?
Yeah, and I think this is a really important point to address because I see a lot of people in my practice where maybe they've been going more plant-based for 6 months, 12 months, and all of a sudden they're like, my energy levels aren't good. Maybe I'm gaining weight. Like, what's the deal? I thought I was supposed to be healthier. And oftentimes what I find is that people will remove the meat from a dish and they won't replace it with anything. So the one nutrient that I tend to talk a lot about is protein. Most of us in North America get plenty of protein. But because plant proteins aren't as concentrated a source as animal proteins, you can't just say, the classic is quinoa. Oh, there was a bit of quinoa on my salad. That's a protein. I was like, no, girl, that was like 3 grams of protein. It was not enough. So I really like to teach people the types of plant foods that have a lot of protein, the hemp seeds, the legumes, the tofu, the tempeh, and make sure that they're always putting a a plant concentrated source of protein on their plate in the context of a meal. I really like to talk in terms of food and not nutrients as much as possible, so that people can become a little bit more intuitive to it. And I use that like really old school plant method, right? Plate method. It's half your plate, fruits and vegetables, quarter of your plate whole grain, and a quarter of your plate a protein. And with plants, sometimes you can like switch that up because legumes can really stand in for some good carbs. You need to add a little bit of fat in there. But I really train people to look at their plate and sort of seek out those components.
Oh, I love that. So you have some fans. So Fabrizio says that his kids love your show and like trying your recipes. So we love that part. And Kathy Craig says hello. Amy says she's as usual with us. Sushil's joining us from India. Thank you so much. A big fan of yoga, eating light. And then Lisa, I'm going to go to your question next because I think this is one that we may have a solution for. Lisa was saying that she struggles to get veggies in at breakfast instead of carbs because she doesn't like eggs. I definitely need more recipes for veggie hashes or mushrooms with veggies. How could I get veggies in at breakfast? Hi, Muriel. Hi, Brenda. So let's take it away to breakfast. What do you got for us from a veggie and a nutrient, you said, plate balanced approach?
Totally. So, I'll take the obvious one off the top. Smoothies, of course, are the most amazing and easy ways to get veggies in. Things that people don't expect to put in them. Cauliflower, steamed cauliflower, you steam it, freeze it, pop it in the smoothie. Same thing with zucchini. So it's doesn't always have to be spinach. But one of my favorite breakfasts is actually my chickpea scramble. It's on the blog. It takes 5 minutes. And instead of making an egg scramble, it's just chickpeas with a little cumin and turmeric. So it's got some flavor. You just mash them in the pan like you would, anything else. And then some spinach, serve it with avocado, serve it with a slice of sprouted grain toast. It's a 5-minute breakfast that's really going to fill you up. And it's got plenty of veggies. I've also been known to eat salad for breakfast. Yeah, I totally do, especially in the summer.
I love that. Totally. And Jan Cooper says she also agrees with Fabrizio. They'd love another season of Urban Vegetarian. And we'd love it here. So yes, 100% on that piece. So I love that notion. So let's go through, we were talking about smoothies and then we're talking about chickpeas from a breakfast standpoint. And if you're somebody who's saying like, well, I'm hearing all these things about like keto or like, are we getting in too much carbohydrate? And I know my beans and my grains and my fruits. How do you navigate that from a plant standpoint where the goal is like really shifting that, especially if you're a practitioner and somebody's coming in and they're saying like, I've basically given up all of these plant foods because I'm trying to, do keto or paleo or vegan or that kind of thing. How do we bring people back around?
Yeah. And, I think it's really important for everyone to know there is no one right way to eat. There isn't. It has to be totally individualized. And, I have people who do actually a very plant-centered keto and they thrive on it. But for the rest of us, we need to stop fearing carbs. We absolutely need to stop fearing carbs. I would say that my plant-based approach tends to be a moderate carbohydrate approach, particularly for, people over, I'm north of 35. Like I don't need the giant vats of brown rice like I used to. I just don't. And so I really focus on the plant proteins and those slow burn forms of carbs, getting the sweet potato, getting all the fruits and veggies, and not being afraid of the carbs themselves, but being mindful of the amount of grain we have in our diet, particularly if we're sedentary or if we are north of 35. So carbs are wonderful. It's the form that matters most for blood sugar balance, for energy levels, and just overall health. I
love that. Well, Fabrizio is joining you. He is north of 35 at 53 and said he still gets carded at bars because he's got a great, well-balanced vegetarian diet. So we love that. Awesome. Brenda was asking about if you have any recipes or ever make anything in an Instapot because it's so popular now. And if so, what are your favorites?
So I feel like I am the only person on the planet who doesn't have an Instapot.
Me too.
Okay, so it's just you and me.
That's right. Totally.
So I think they're amazing tools. I really do think they are amazing tools. And I actually, I don't have it beside me, but there's an amazing like plant-based instant pot cookbook that just came out. So if you are looking for something, it's out there. It's by someone. Her Instagram handle is Rainbow Plant Life, I believe. Super cool. So if you have an Instapot, totally check it out. In my I've made stuff from there, but then I just put it in a normal pot because we eat a lot of stews, a lot of mixed meals. And I think that's one of the big things. If people are raised in that kind of traditional, like meat, potato, veg pattern, that a lot of plant-based meals are mixed. I mean, you can kind of slab the tofu steak on there, but a lot of them are curries and stews. And so that can take some getting used to, but I love that so many of them are just one pan and it's just so easy.
That's awesome. So we've got some questions about balancing also, like what foods can you have with other foods and ingredients. And I'm going to share Lisa's question and then I'm going to come back and see if I can bring all these together. So Lisa's asking, is there any validity to the idea of keeping veggies and fruits separate in smoothies? So I think this is what we're getting into. A local health food store went on a bit of a soapbox lecture about fruit and vegetables being thrown into smoothies together. It's your food combining, really, is what they're talking, because it could wreak havoc on your gut. So this allows us to talk about gut health, Desiree. And it says they were adamant that the fruit should be eaten alone. This was the first that she had heard of that.
Yeah. So I love this one because it's so clearly illustrates what is going on the internet and in the world and what our actual physiology is. So if you're not aware of how human physiology works, you don't realize that it is virtually impossible for food to rot in your stomach, or that it will digest differently than the other. Like your body just shoots out digestive enzymes. It doesn't care if there's fruit or vegetable, all those carbohydrate enzymes, they come out. It will all empty out of your stomach in good time. So yeah, food combining is so old, right? I think it's the 70s, that Fit for Life book. And it was like, it's pervasive. It's one of those ones that's super pervasive. I'm a huge fan of like actual food combining in that, you make sure you combine a protein and a fat and a carbohydrate for more measured digestion, measured blood sugar control. But yeah, that old school food combining, it's just completely unfounded in science.
Plus, oh my God, gross. A smoothie with just the vegetable. I mean, I'm sure there's some, but remember, avocado's a fruit. It would just taste so to just have it. So in the name of let's not do that. But I think what it actually is underlying is this pursuit to find things that make the gut feel better. Because, I think what we see behind all of these, I was avoiding carbohydrates, or I shouldn't have carbohydrates and vegetables at the same time, or whatever, is basically what we know to be true is that so many of us are dealing with irritated, frustrated, overwhelmed digestive systems. So in eating more plants, one of the things that we often hear about is I'm a little bit nervous, or I'm a lot nervous, and I'm not even going to try it because they make me bloated, or they make me gassy, or I just feel so full, or I put weight on in my belly. So how does eating more plants, one, help digestion? And number two, what are some of the tools to help you digest those plants that you're eating more of better?
Yeah. So, when I first got started, I've been practicing anti-inflammatory nutrition my entire 11-year now career, I think it is. I really didn't have that knowledge of the gut before. This whole concept of the immune system and the digestive system and the nervous system being so deeply intertwined. And then the role that gut bacteria play in all this has really blown apart my original thinking about anti-inflammatory nutrition. And we know now that one of the most important nutrients or non-nutrients for fighting inflammation is fiber. And I actually just am writing about this on my Instagram today because, when we have adequate fiber, particularly fermentable fibers, we transform the gut bacteria into ones that create short chain fatty acids that help fuel gut cell metabolism, that help decrease gut barrier function and help decrease inflammation. So we know that fiber and plant foods are critical for fighting inflammation. And you'll see now there's a lot of gastroenterologists who have completely given up meat and they're very much singing the praises of plants. But if your gut is a little bit messed up or a lot messed up, which is a lot of people in my practice and me, I have irritable bowel syndrome. So a lot of people, when you kind of start down that plant life, you eat legumes and you're super gassy and maybe your eliminations are not so hot, you need to give your body time to adjust. So it's one of those things where you consume it in small, consistent amounts. With my clients who have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, we will often work with only cooked and blended forms to help sort of pre-digest these foods so that they can get small amounts of legumes and vegetables in, which would otherwise irritate them. And then we ramp them up. Because if you go from 0 to 60 in terms of fiber overnight, you are not going to like me and you are going to throw my book on the bonfire.
And especially to your point, I also will say to people, so for example, if I travel a ton. I may not do well with fiber as much on a travel day, which I could liken for somebody else if they know they're going to have a very sedentary day, because my system just isn't going to be moving as much. So to your point, the purees or, those options, you used a big word in there, the fermentable fibers. And I think it's an area, and it's going to allow us to segue into the difference between eating more plants. I'm going to take you on a road trip here. Eating more plants versus eating processed plants. And I want to talk a little bit about highly processed versus kitchen processed, and where we fall in that part. But one of the things that has been in those fermentable fibers, I think an area of concern for people is they'll hear someone like yourself say it's so great for you to get this in, and then they'll go, grab a package and it's got inulin or chicory root, and they eat that and it's like a bellyache for 5 days. So your point about how much are you getting in? But let's start off with what actually in nature are these fermentable fibers, and then let's move into what's the difference between what we might get in nature and what we're finding in packages more often.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because, and you were probably taught this too, fibers used to seem so simple, right? You had insoluble fiber, which was the broom, and soluble fiber, which was the sponge. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And now we realize that fibers is actually this huge category. And so we have the fermentable, the prebiotic fibers like inulin from chicory or from sunchokes or in asparagus. And often with all of these gut health or gut friendly food products, they're a huge dose of inulin, which I actually don't recommend for any of my digestive health clients because they're so strongly fermentable that they feel like your gut's sort of being ripped apart. I prefer to have a varied intake of fibers from whole foods because that's much easier on the system. Second part of that question.
Well, let's actually stop there for a second.
Okay.
Intentionally. So how would you go about in a day getting in a variety of those fibers then, deliciously?
Yeah. So, I look to get the legumes in there. You're going to get that soluble fiber, or something like oats or barley are also going to give you that really beautiful soluble fiber, which particularly if you're having trouble with elimination is just me and psyllium are BFFs. Not so much inulin, but I love psyllium.
Awesome.
Anyone I can tell it to, I will tell it to. And then you want to get, more of those stronger cereal fibers or those plant wall fibers. So whereas the inside of an apple will give you the soluble fiber, the skin of an apple is going to give you that insoluble fiber. And what I find kind of the beauty of just sticking to whole foods is that if you get that variety, just a variety of plant foods every day, you're naturally going to get the insoluble, the soluble, the fermentable. You'll get some resistant starch, maybe if you have some potato salad this weekend at the barbecue. And all of those things will help contribute to fostering a healthy microbiome and therefore a healthier gut and less inflammation.
Oh, I love it. I also learned from a mutual colleague of ours, an Australian dietitian who is just on the prebiotic train, that when we make overnight oats and we have them cold instead of hot, that we're actually getting more of that prebiotic fiber from our oats rather than when we cook it. So I was like, okay, now again, cooking oatmeal, awesome for you. No issues there, but a great way. And depending on, so that's I think sometimes for me has been a stepping stone because those sunchokes, whoa, step away. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about, this is big. I could go off on a tirade, but fortunately I have you here and I just get to ask, we are in the land of plant everything is better now, right? So your plant-based burger is just going to be better because it's made from plants. I don't care if it's pieces and parts of plants. I don't care what else is in there, any of that stuff, and so on. Same in the, in the dairy case, same in the yogurt space, same across the board. So when we talk about eat more plants, when we have a cookbook, how does one figure out how to eat more plants, and what is the role for those plant processed foods, and kind of where do you get into, like, I might go like green, yellow, red, like we know what's green, we were talking about that, but how do we kind of navigate that yellow, red area?
Yeah, and this is a big thing too. And it depends why you come to this plant life, right? We just, no matter what we do in North America, we figure out how to hyper process it.
That's right.
And, just as everything gluten-free was good for you before, and then we're like, wait a second, now it's everything vegan is good for you. And we're like, wait a second. So green light, obviously single ingredient whole foods, right? Apple, yes. Chickpea, yes. Super good. And then there is just the processing, so do canned beans make it easier to eat beans? Absolutely. Does a nice muesli without like a lot of added sugar taste really good on top of your yogurt? For sure. For me, I kind of live by that 80-20 principle. So I like me a Beyond Meat burger, but it is a treat. It is not a mainstay of my diet. Why? Because it is hyper-processed. And we have research to show us that hyper-processed foods, even if they are plant foods, aren't great for us. So I ask people, and this is, I think, the hardest thing when you're in that hyper-processed zone, to be like, no, not that packaged snack food, an actual piece of food, like some carrots and hummus, for example. But that yellow zone for me is really defined by what I call like my healthy recipe test or my healthy kitchen test. And that when you totally ignore the nutrition facts panel, as I am wont to do, I always look at the ingredients because that's where food can't hide. So I want an ingredients panel to read like a recipe from my book. If it does, I give it a pass, because sometimes I don't make my own tomato sauce. Oh my gosh, no, I don't. But I buy tomato sauce made from tomatoes and olive oil and basil and salt and oregano, So if it sounds like that, looks like that, then you give it a go.
Great. Yeah, I think that's so important to really, and I love that 80-20 notion, which really, if you think about it, could also break out by days or by, times in that piece. Okay, awesome. You guys keep the questions coming, because I'm trying to catch up with all of you. Okay, we have a couple questions around kids, which is awesome because Desiree happens to have them. And one of the things she was talking about writing a book was to make sure that she had options for people like herself, i.e. people who are trying to do other things in their day than just sit in the kitchen and prepare recipes. So one of the questions is around, how do I get my kids to eat more plants? So I made that a little oversimplified to the couple of people that wrote those in, but I think we're going to get your answer. So there you go. Yes.
Yeah, so I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I actually wrote in the introduction of the book that I owe them a couple bags of potato chips. So I think the biggest thing is that you start them as young as humanly possible. Like, I'm a really big believer when you're introducing first foods that you're not introducing all these bland things. Like, typically we just give them rice cereal and we're like, okay, so we're teaching them to like bland, sweet stuff. I hammer home on those vegetables. When they're already 7 or 4 or, 12, it's harder to introduce. And so I really encourage parents to be creative and really involve their kids. So if they have certain foods that they absolutely love that are their favorite, can you figure out a plant-based version? And, like even for a bolognese, it could be as simple as like half ground beef, half lentils. They probably won't even notice, but you might actually open that conversation. Like, do you notice anything different about this meal? And like, no, not at all. It's like, there's lentils. Why did we put lentils? Well, lentils have a lot of fiber. They're super good for your tummy. Eating more plant foods is really important for our health, but also the health of the planet. Give them a reason why, as opposed to just saying, this is how we're eating. And then make it as fun for them as possible. Like, I love my spiralizer, and the kids my kids hate zucchini, but if I spiralize it, it's so fun, right? Because it's noodles and it's cool. And, there's a lot of different ways that you can play with it. Desserts are a really great entry into plant-based eating, because you can do something whole foods like a cashew cheesecake with blueberries that is so simple and nourishing, but still tastes like a treat.
Absolutely. And you got some more praise. I did not know this. So tell us where people can make sure to be signed up for Eat More Plants, because apparently you won the most anticipated book status, which bravo. So we want to know. So we are talking with Desiree Nielsen RD, author of the soon to be released, right? Eat More Plants. Where can people get your book, and where can they sign up to make sure that they're getting your book?
Yeah. So if you want to be signed up and in tune with all the news, sign up for my weekly newsletter, which is just on my website, DesireeRD.com. And all the information is going out there. But also on my website, you can get a free recipe. So you can get a recipe right away. You just put in your email address and you'll get my carrot tahini granola bars, which are nut free. So they're perfect for back to school. So I know a lot of people, I don't want to be thinking about it, but we're already thinking about it.
Oh, wow. With back to school, I can't even locally, everyone's back to school on Monday here, which is just crazy on that part. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you guys are so much earlier than us. Like we don't go back until the Tuesday after Labor Day.
Yeah. It's crazy. I'm like, what happened to always, September was back to school. So yeah, we started planning for it in July, which was not fun, but, yeah. So, okay. So a couple of other questions that have kind of just popped in and around, in terms of, eating more plants. And I'm just conscious of everybody's time. We always try to keep these about 30 minutes, but I'm going to borrow Desiree for just a couple more. So one of the questions is, what is the issue with fruit? We hear so much about fruit being bad for you or too much sugar, etc. I think you answered it before, but especially we were just also talking about kids. So let's just set the record straight on, I've never had a patient be unhealthy because of fruit consumption. It's 22 years of patience, but maybe I don't know something. So go with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And oh man, this gets me in the whole lectins plant paradox thing. It just gets me because we are not unwell because we eat whole foods. We are unwell because we don't. There is nothing wrong with fruit. Fruit is amazing. It is delicious. It is nutrient dense. It has fiber. The challenge is when we turn fruit into things that are no longer fruit. So if we're guzzling massive bottles of juice all the time, if we're eating fruit snacks that are really just like syrups made from fruit, that's an issue. Eat whole fruit. It's totally healthy. If you have difficulty controlling your blood sugars because of diabetes, then maybe you want to be more moderate, only temperate fruits, only after a meal, and maybe only a couple of pieces or maybe 3 pieces a day max. But everyone else should be enjoying fruit as part of a healthy diet. And quite frankly, we all love our sweets. So the best place to be getting it, we fear fruit. And yet we go and drink pop or get a Frappuccino, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so crazy. So that actually is awesome, because I wanted to ask also about what belongs in a smoothie and what doesn't, in terms of when you're talking about, we were talking before about what's on your plate, but so much of what we're consuming today is through liquids, straws and bottles on that part. So what should we look for from a plant beverage standpoint?
Yeah, so I greatly caution people against a lot of smoothies that are offered by quick service places, because so many have so much juice in them and they're super, super sugary. But when you're making one at home, I always have some sort of creamy base. So it's honestly usually banana. I don't know why people are hating on bananas, but I love a frozen banana in a smoothie because it makes it taste like ice cream. Mm-hmm. And then I usually double down on the veggies. So I eat a lot of green smoothies. Spinach is the easiest because it tastes very mild. But sometimes I go a little bit hardcore and I'm fully into the kale and celery and parsley. I actually love parsley in a smoothie because it's really zippy, but it's also clean. Mm-hmm. And the way to mask the bitterness and the dullness of greens in a smoothie is lemon. Mm. So quick tip, if you're my green smoothie tastes muddy, lemon. So once you've chosen a fruit, and I usually only have 1.5 servings, so maybe half cup, 3/4 of a cup of fruit. And then at least that of vegetables. Mm. I do some sort of plant-based milk. A lot of the times I'll do just hemp seeds with water, because hemp seeds will blend into their own milk that's high in omega-3s. It's got a little bit of protein in there too. For me, a smoothie without protein is a snack. It's not a meal. So you have to put that protein in there, some silken organic tofu. I do like some protein powders. There are some that are much simpler, like made from, quinoa and brown rice. I find the brown rice ones are great for our gut people because they're easier to digest. And then I normally throw a little bit of fun stuff in there. Like sometimes it's cacao, like raw cacao powder and some cinnamon. I'm big on adaptogens, so I might throw my adaptogens like ashwagandha to help chill me out because I need it. I might throw that in there. And then like a little spice, a little ginger, turmeric, something to, make it sing.
Make the zhuzhing, right? To like give it that extra level. We need our beverages to be next level. I totally love that. And so one of the other questions is about maintaining iron levels, especially in a 20-something-year-old woman. I think that oftentimes that's a doctor will see an anemic woman and say, or even like a borderline, which just drives me nuts, and say like, oh, you got to like stop eating those plants. You got to, eat animals, or you have to take an iron supplement before trying some of these others. So what are your go-tos for maintaining healthy iron levels with food?
Yeah. And I don't know, Ashley, if you have noticed this, but I feel like anemia and iron levels are not nearly as clear cut as we make them out to be. Most of my anemic clients are actually meat eaters and not vegetarians. That's just like my N of a few hundred. But
now, why do we think that is? Let's just follow through what we were just talking about. If your digestive system is not absorbing the nutrients, like just because you ate a big wad of, iron containing meat doesn't mean that iron is going to go where it's supposed to go. Anywho.
Well, and especially because, like the way that we regulate our iron intake, when our iron levels are lower, we upregulate absorption. But also when we get a huge bolus dose, like a big dose of iron, we downregulate absorption. It's a whole thing for me.
Yeah.
When it comes to plants.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it comes to plants, it really is about following the protein because iron and protein normally go together in plant foods. And so making sure you get enough legumes, making sure, again, unless you're allergic or intolerant, that you are not scared of tofu because organic tofu is a beautiful thing and really high in iron. Hemp seeds are a great option. So focusing on those nuts, seeds, legumes, and organic tofu and tempeh products will give you your iron. And I've been vegetarian for so long that my iron is always low normal. Like I've just sat on the cusp. I've had 2 pregnancies. The first pregnancy was 0 anemia. The second pregnancy, I did get anemic in the 3rd trimester. And it bounced completely back after delivery. So it is just about being mindful. It's a great idea. If you're fully transitioning to a plant-based diet, like 6 months in, get some blood work.
And
track where you're standing.
Track your levels. I like what you were saying, like you're low normal. Well, that's because we have like these crazy norms that are meant to span like all people living on the planet. And you're like, hold on, maybe actually I'm just good. Here's what my numbers are. They kind of went a little low. Now they're kind of back, so I think that part of it, just makes so much sense. What you're arguing for is also just paying attention to your numbers so that you can address it before it's profound. I think that's super smart. So I think as you were starting to talk about the iron piece and the protein one, it strikes me too, that's another really strong argument for, especially on the protein side, not going for the high processed, right? Because you were talking about like, you might get in these like beans, you'll get the iron and the other nutrients. But if it's like a processed, if you're just having isolated pea protein, you're not going to get the iron or the other nutrient that would be in there, right?
Yeah, and I really believe in the wisdom of whole foods too. Like there were antioxidants in a blueberry before we knew what an antioxidant was. And so, nature doesn't really mess around. And so I believe that, the complex of nutrients in whole foods probably lead us to far better bioavailability and absorption and metabolism than getting them in isolated form.
I love it. So before we conclude, I want to take us back because we got way more even nutrient-y than I wanted to, because tonight was about mouth-wateringness of eating more plants. Okay. Off the top of your head, just mind-blowing, so excited about these 3 recipes, and tell us why.
It is so hard. I've been getting that question a lot the last couple of weeks, and they're all my babies, and I can't choose my favorite baby. But the ones that I feel like others will be more excited about, that I feel like I can get.
Yes.
So there's a lentil walnut taco, which blows my mind. And it blows my mind because I taught this in a cooking class, and people look at the recipe and they're like, and then they eat it and their jaws literally drop. They can't believe how flavorful it is. It takes less than 30 minutes, and it even has like a salad masquerading as a salsa to put on top of it, and pickled onions, turmeric pickled onions, which blow me away. I also love my almond snickerdoodle cookies because, again, it's like 6 ingredients, almond flour, and they look like they might be dry or they might be bland, but they're like these little pillows of awesomeness that, again, are really surprising for people. And then let's see what else I can choose. I really love my turmeric cake. It's based on traditional Lebanese turmeric cake, which typically has like 2 cups of sugar in it. And so it's a really beautiful traditional food that I've made sort of healthified and made modern, and used cornmeal to give it that sort of semolina crunch. Because of course it's everything in the book is gluten-free. And I love it because I remember, back in the day when we were kids, like our parents and grandparents would have company over, and you'd have like a little something to have with some tea or some coffee. And so it's a very nostalgic kind of recipe for me, and I love it.
Oh, such a gift. I cannot wait to get it. We're so excited. So eat more plants. Duh. Like it's 2019. We have to. So such a great title, such a great publication. When will people give us the date? When is it going to be available?
Yeah. And this is it, because I can actually show people.
Yay!
Yeah.
Put it on like for longer. Hold on. You only did like a little flash. Show it off. Like bring it back up. There you go. Yeah. There you go. Oh.
Yeah, so this is my baby, my book baby. So it comes out August 27th, which is just 19 days away.
Right around the corner.
And I'm super excited to share it with everyone. Coming down to New York and LA, so we're going to do some TV. So yeah, we're going to share it with the world. I'm really excited.
Well, maybe we can find Ohio. We'll see if we can make that work on that trip. But you guys, a great thing about August books is that if you purchase them for, the holidays at that point, your holiday shopping is done. So that is also just an awesome idea and a great way to think about how you can help somebody enjoy plants more often going into 2020. So Desiree, thank you. And we'd like to point out, this is very important. Your book is coming out the day after Amy's birthday. So that makes it it's like a birthday present for you, Amy. I hope that someone watching gets it for you, or that you gift it for yourself. And you guys, thank you so much. Just want to say shout out, first of all, to our Better Nutrition expert. This was just awesome. I hope you're as excited about just to keep playing with plants and trying to get them in more often. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you like what you saw, give us a thumbs up. And if you are most importantly, if anything that you heard today was like an aha moment for you, or you think it could be an aha moment for somebody else, please go ahead and share this with them. This is free. This is just, we're here sharing the good word about plants, and we hope that you will share it with others. So thank you so much. And Desiree, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks, Ashley. I had so much fun.
Awesome. Bye, everyone. Good night.
Night.